Welcome. In this video we're going to cover the AWS environment. So AWS has hundreds of globally distributed data centers, and they're divided into regions that are in turn further divided into availability zones. So AWS performs its cloud magic using hundreds of thousands of servers maintained within physical data centers that are located in widely distributed set of geographic regions. And as Amazon's global footprint grows, the number of regions grows with it, and you'll soon see why having a wide choice of regions as possible is a valuable feature of cloud computing. All right, so let's get into the AWS regions. So here is some of the regions, right? So this is slide 1 of 2, right? The U.S. West, U.S. East, right? Each have 2 regions, and then the Asia Pacific, right? They have a northeast, a south, and a southeast regions. So these are regions. They're then further subdivided into availability zones, but these are the larger regions. And then here we have Canada, China, EU, South America, and then a government region. US Gov has its own region, and there's more coming. This, isn't a all-inclusive list, but this just gives you an example of the regions available in Amazon. Some of the services are regionally based services. So when you request an instance of an AWS service, the underlying hardware of that instance will be carved out of a server running in one and only one AWS region. This is true whether you're talking about an elastic cloud computing EC2 virtual machine, it's elastic block storage, a bucket in the simple storage solution service S3, or even the new Lambda serverless functions. In all of those cases, although anyone anywhere in the world can be given access to your resources, the underlying physical machine, the physical host, can only exist in only one region. Right? Of course, that's not to say that you can't choose to run parallel resources in multiple regions, and and have more availability and fault tolerance because you're running in more than one region. But a machine will run in only one region at a time, and can only run in one region. And that there are sometimes some edge case scenarios where it makes sense to run multiple regions, right? But you must always be aware that the region that's active for any resource when you're launching and you're doing your planning, because it's going to make an important determination of where those resources are physically located when you actually spin them up. So it's not surprising. It's very easy to accidentally launch a resource in the wrong region. It is very easy to do. Doing this can make it impossible for a mutual dependent application components to find each other. Maybe you spin up the frontier in one region and the back end database in another region, and then they can't communicate, and definitely would be expensive communications even if you could get them to communicate, because they're going across the world. It could be very expensive even if you could get it to work. Sometimes you may not even be able to get it to work because they won't be able to see each other. They're not in the same geographic location. As a result, you can cause your application to fail. Accidental launches can also make it hard to keep track of your running resources, leading to extra expenses caused by unused, unnecessary instances not being shut down. So checking your current region, where you're at right now, should become second nature reflex, right? So let's go ahead. Let me see if I can bring up Amazon here. Get my code. Alright, my account. What's my code? Should have multi-factor authentication turned on at all times. So let me go switch to TCC Dev. Alright, so here's my management console, and you can see that I'm in Ohio right now. I'm in the US East 2, right? So it tells you right up here in the upper right hand corner what region you're in. So if I were to go and launch any of these services like an S3 bucket, it's going to default, or EC2. If I do an EC2 instance, right, it's going to default and load a virtual machine that's physically located in the Ohio region, right? So it's going to be in one of the data centers, one of the availability zones in Ohio. And Ohio has 6 availability zones, 3 availability zones, 2A, 2B, and 2C. So there's at least 3 data centers in the Ohio region. And so I would have to choose one of these availability zones and one of these data centers for the EC2 machine to be spun up into. But it's very easy to accidentally be in the wrong region, right? And so now here I'm in Osaka, Japan, and so I could spin up a machine there, and I may want to do that if that's where my customers are. I want to build the app closer to the customers. That makes sense. I can do that. But I could easily just spin it up and accidentally spin it up and not know that I was in the wrong region. So it's very important that you know what region you're in, and it should become second nature to be checking that at all times. Oops. There we go. Globally based services. All right. There are some services, though, that are global. So some resources are not visibly tied to any one region, even if those regions are technically running on hardware that may exist within a single region. AWS presents them as global. As a rule, their global status will generally make sense from a structural perspective. Here are some examples, right? So our AWS Identity Access Management, IAM, which is security, is a service for managing the way access to your resources is achieved by users, groups, roles, and policies. You'll learn more about IAM in Chapter 5. Securing our resources, but that is a global based service. It doesn't make sense to have it regionally based or looking at it from a region based. So security is a global service. So that's IAM, Identity and Access Management, is a global based service. Amazon CloudFront, which is the content delivery network. So you can use this service to lower access latency for applications by storing cached versions of frequently used data at the edge locations of AWS. So you're pushing it out out of the central data center where your app may live, and you're pushing it out to the edge devices where all the customers live. And so from a global perspective, CloudFront is a global service because you could, and in fact will most likely, span more than one region with your data cache close to users, right? So even if you're just US based, you'd want both the US East and US West regions for your data, and so you want multiple regions for the content delivery. So CloudFront is a global based service. And then another one is S3 buckets. Even though they'll exist in a single region, S3 is nevertheless considered a global service. You open the S3 console page and you look at the region indicator and it'll be global. So let's do that. So let me go here and let's go and access S3. So see, right now we're in EC2 and we're region-based service, and so Ohio is selected as our region. But if I go to S3, our region becomes global, right? So this is a global region, and then so it doesn't matter, right? It's seen as global, although we'll have to create the bucket in a region. As you can see, this bucket here exists in the US East 1. That's where the bucket lives, but the service is considered global. So and then so another global service is CloudFront, and so we'll go to CloudFront, and you can create a distribution, and it's considered global, right? Okay, so that's it with the global-based services, and we'll talk about service endpoints. Service endpoints, to work with or access a resource when you're running within an AWS region, you'll have to know how they're identified. You'll need the service endpoint, which is another name for the service identifier, and it will usually appear to be like a URL in dotted formation, right? So here is the service endpoint for EC2, right? In the US East 1 region, right? So that's a endpoint. So ec2.us-east-1.amazonaws.com. That is the service endpoint for EC2 in the US East 1 region. Alright, so that is what we're going to cover in this video. In our next video, we're going to address availability zones, and we talked about them briefly, but we'll go into a little more detail about availability zones. So we'll see you in the next video.